Hello guys, today I want to talk about API responses and how to make them consistent with the same structure between the validation errors and exceptions. And there are a few ways how you can ensure that. I will show you one of them. And this is based on the same example we had last week of vending machine API. It's a very long video, 30 minutes. And if you haven't watched that, I will link that in the description below. But today I want to zoom in on one of the parts, which is API validation. And here's an example. So imagine you have a validation for those fields which are present or not present, their format, and in case of something important missing, you have a typical response from default Laravel validation with 422 status code with message from the first error and then the full error list as array. For example, if we miss two fields, then we have the array of slot numbers required and product prices required. So that's the default Laravel validation. Now, what if you want to have the same behavior in the validation which comes after the form request? So here's the code of the controller. You have form request, which performs the things that we've seen. So fields required, integer, and those would give the default validation errors. But then there are some validation operations happening after the default field validation, the logic validation. For example, you're trying to charge the card, but in some cases the card may be missing, the employee may be not found. So basically those parameters require some database operation which may not return the correct data. So you may want to classify those as also validation exceptions with 422 status code, just with different validation messages. And one of the ways to do that is to provide exceptions for each type of each case of something went wrong. And if you have a lot of those exceptions, how to make them consistent. So in this case, we have quite a few exceptions which are extending the same base exception, which looks like this. Purchase exception renders response JSON with message similar to the message from default validation. It also adds success false. And let's imagine you want to send success true in case of, well, successful request. So after all those exceptions, at the very end of the controller method, we return success true, also with message for consistency and also additional data for successful response. So for example, if we provide those fields, then there will be validation error 422, but this one will come from exception class. Now the question then becomes, how do we return success false in the default validation of Laravel? It is not returned by default. So for that, in the form request, one of the ways to do that is to specify failed validation method to basically override the default validator, still return the validation exception, still with the same message and errors, still with the same 422, but add success false on top in addition to that. And now if we try to repeat the same thing without any variable, we have message and errors, but success false is added on top. And then if we try to simulate the correct response, so product price should not be 50, in the database product ID is 71. So if we change that to 71, it should return to 100, we send, and yeah, purchase successful, some data, and then success true is here as a part of the successful response. So yeah, this is the case where you have a lot of potential exceptions, a lot of things potentially going wrong, and you decide to create exception classes for each of them instead of just returning different responses here directly in the controller. Again, as I said, this is just one way to make the response consistent. You may create your own traits to be used in the controller, or you can create some methods in the base controller of Laravel. I've covered those cases in separate videos in the past, and I will link a few videos in the description below for alternatives. But what do you think about this approach? Let's discuss in the comments below. And by the way, if you haven't worked with exceptions that much, I have a separate course on Laravel Daily.com, handling exceptions and errors in Laravel, only 8 lessons and only 30 minutes to read. But you will find out how to create your own exceptions and why you would do that, the difference between exceptions and PHP errors. This is quite important, how try-catch works, and other important details. I will link that course in the description below. That's it for this time, and see you guys in other videos.